Trier is a very special destination in Germany. It's a Roman city and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is Trier. It's the oldest city in all of Germany, and people come here for the Christmas market, the history, the Roman history, of course, and they shop. It's unbelievable. I'm loving this city and all of its history.
So we're here in Germany's oldest city. We're 2,036 years old this year here in Trier, and that means we have everything from ancient times to modern ugly. We're a modern city, of course, at the same time, and officially we have 110,000 inhabitants, but of course there are a lot more people here. We have about 20,000 students here. We have a university, we have a technical university, and then we have very small but very important, a Catholic theological seminary. Trier is majority Roman Catholic, something which is highly noticeable, shall we say. It's the seat of a Roman Catholic bishop going all the way back into the Roman times, so more than 1,800 years ago. We're here in a large regional area where Trier is the largest city, and we're not very far from the Luxembourg border. This was the territory that the famous Julius Caesar conquered in 50 BC. And to sort of get you oriented, that would be today the southern part of Holland, all of Belgium, all of Luxembourg, about 2/3 of France, and this part of Germany west of the Rhine River. And the people who lived here basically in this part of the world were Celtic people. People are familiar with their relatives, shall we say, in Britain and in Ireland, and you all know the Boston Celtics. Yeah. And the tribe in this area that had its headquarters in southern Luxembourg was called the Treveri. In 17 BC, the first Roman emperor, Augustus, the one from the Christmas story in the Bible, founded a city for these Treveri, and it was named after them. Big long Latin name, of course. Augusta Treverorum, the imperial, the Augustus city of the Treveri. And this, believe it or not, became the largest and most important Roman city north of the Alps. So the Romans were here for more than 400 years and have left us more remains, Roman remains, than any other place north of the Alps. And our landmark is right behind me here. About 200 years after the city was founded, let's say about AD 170, something like that, the Romans finally built a stone wall around the city, 4 miles long, and it had 5 gates on it, 2 of which are left. This was the main city gate, and then the other gate is way out. It was the amphitheater where the gruesome games took place, but served a second purpose. That is, the wall was attached to the already existing amphitheater, so that the arena then was one of the 5 gates. This is still standing, this Porta Nigra, because it was recycled as church for more than 700 years, a major institution here in the city. And so it has survived as the largest, best preserved Roman city gate anywhere north of the Alps. This lovely building behind me is called the House of the Three Magi. First of all, there were no house numbers going way back into the Middle Ages. People just had names on houses. This is the last of several what's called residential towers here in the city from the Middle Ages. And this was built about 1230. So there was no wall to protect the city long after the Roman times. But these people knew that they were going to get a wall, which was finally finished about 20 years later. That is, they could see it being built. And so they still had the old principle of the residential towers. You live upstairs and sort of pull the ladder in after you kind of thing. They, of course, didn't really use ladders. They had stairs. So if you can imagine, starting on the left-hand side of the building, going diagonally up to the front door, up in the first upper story, that was literally the front door. And then, of course, once the wall was built, then all they had to do was go out a front door out on the street level, knowing that they were finally protected. As you can see behind me here that after the Second World War in the 1960s, not everybody was careful about how things were reconstructed here, rebuilt here, but you can see this lovely, lovely facade from the 18th century. The house that was behind it was destroyed. The facade is not even in its original position. It was a little further to my right. But when this department store was built in the 1960s then, the very lovely house facade was incorporated into the department store, and that helps a little bit. We are now here in the Roman Palace Audience Hall. That is the throne room, the seat of power. During the 4th century, during the Roman period here, Trier was an imperial capital of the Roman Empire. That is, over the course of about 100 years, 9 different emperors ruled an area from Hadrian's Wall in northern England all the way down to Morocco in North Africa, and from the Atlantic over to the Rhine. And so this building was begun, according to the archaeologists here, about 305, AD 305. And it was built out of handmade brick and mortar, and in between the windows, the walls are 9 feet thick. All of the foundations are still there today, all 4 of them. Roman cast mortar, in some cases even harder than modern concrete, and they are 13 feet thick and up to 15 feet deep into the earth. That was Roman engineering, Roman stability, shall we say. And of course it looked a bit different during the Roman period, and I would like to show you an artist's reconstruction of what it might have looked like here. You can see that there are all different colors of stone. This will give you an idea of the expense that was gone to here. For example, the black marble on the floor is from Belgium. The white marble is the famous Carrara from Italy. And then you see green stone on the walls. That actually is from Trier here in the area. And yellow stone comes from Turkey. And then the red stone that you see everywhere on the wall, the X's, the diamonds, and so on. This stone is called porphyry. But in Latin, it's called lapis purpureus. You hear the word purple, which of course is the imperial color. So all of this will give you a little bit of an idea of the concept that the Roman emperors had of themselves, or we might even say what the Romans thought of themselves. Now, the building is the largest surviving single room left over from ancient times, and it is one of Trier's 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, all of which are or were Roman. And what happened was later on this was used as a castle in the Middle Ages. All of the windows were walled up, and so it became an absolutely impregnable castle. And finally, about 1,300 years after it was built, this is now about 1614, it was decided, this is old and ugly, why don't we tear it down and build something new? So they discovered after 1,300 years that they couldn't tear it down, so they took gunpowder and blew up the walls. So, for example, this wall is original, going around the half circle, the apse is original, going over to this wall over here on this side of the organ you see in the last window, and then over on the right-hand side up to a certain depth, then the wall has been redone. The building today is the main Protestant church here in Trier, of the official German Protestant church, and this was created by rebuilding the blown up walls here in the 1850s when the Prussians came here after the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. So since 1856, this has been the main Protestant church here in the city, the Church of the Redeemer, with the name that the Prussians gave to it as well, the so-called Constantine Basilica. Now, this is not a basilica in the idea of a nave in the middle and two side aisles. What you see today is the reconstruction, shall we say, the renovation after this completely burned out in August of 1944 during the Second World War. And this is then the result from the rededication of the church in 1956. So for 100 years, 1956, then this was the church and still is today now. And since there is nothing on the wall, there are grave acoustical problems in here. Earlier with the older sound system, you could hear the sermon bouncing off the walls at least 3 times. And there, of course, are large choral concerts in here. And they have to hang a huge canopy over the heads of the choir singers to hold down the sound. And if you sit in the back of the room, then things have a tendency to run together, shall we say.
Jon Haggins, the GlobeTrotter, is like no other travel book in the world. When I think of travel, I think of friends from around the world. I've traveled to Malaysia, Thailand, India, everywhere. You're going to absolutely love the book. And the recipes, you will whet your appetite with these incredible aromatic recipes. Remember, my world is your world. So get up, get out, and travel. This is Karl Marx's birth home. It's now a museum.
We're now standing in front of the house where Karl Marx was born on May the 5th, 1818. And the house is a museum today. We, of course, get thousands of Chinese visitors every year, and most of them come here and get their picture taken at the front door. They do not necessarily go into the museum. They simply get the picture taken to show they were here, and then they all go out shopping. The house was a very, very nice townhouse at the time. It was built in 1727. When Marx was a year and a half old, his family moved and bought a house directly across from the Roman city gate, the Porta Nigra, and that is where he grew up. The house itself then actually sort of went under in the sense of nobody knew where it was. The Social Democratic Party was sent, someone was sent here from this political party, which at the time was still affiliated with the Communist Party, here to Trier to find out where Karl Marx had been born. Well, of course, here in Trier, nobody wanted to know where Karl Marx had been born. It was very, very difficult to chase down. And finally, the Social Democratic Party bought the house, and it was converted into a museum by an architect here in the area, a man named Gustav Kasel. Naturally, the Nazis took it over when they came to power in 1933, and this became the publishing house of their national propaganda newspaper. And then after the war was over, the house was turned back over to the Social Democratic Party and has been a very, very well visited museum. We're now outside the so-called Electoral Palace. That is, the elector here was also the Archbishop in that thing that called itself the Holy Roman Empire, which was not dissolved until the French Revolution came along here in 1806. And this palace is today an office building. You can see that it's attached to the Roman throne room that we were in. That is what you see sticking out on the left-hand side. That was converted into a wing of this brand new quadrangle palace with a huge courtyard. And it is the seat of the district government. But behind the balcony, there is a room that was recreated in the lovely Baroque form with ceiling paintings and optical illusions. The doorway into the palace, this wing of the palace, is not in the middle. That's because originally, in front of where now the church is standing, then there was an extension onto the building. So the doorway was originally, in the 18th century, in the middle. And since the church was built in, then that is gone, this symmetry. And if you look then here on the right-hand side behind the bare trees, you can see that there is an extension here. And those trees were actually planted so that today you would appear to find the doorway in the middle.
Welcome to Trier. My name is Norbert Kätler. I'm responsible here for tourism in this city, and Trier is the oldest city of Germany. It's a city which is founded more than 2,000 years ago. Well, we are here in a traditionally Germany wine bar, and you can choose between 700 different wines here. Trier is one of the wine capitals of Germany, and the Riesling is the most famous grape you can find here. We have fantastic festivals here in Trier. For example, at the moment we have the Christmas market, very traditional. It's not just a Christmas market, it's a number one in Germany, because there was a competition some days ago, and Trier was voted as number one. Trier is the capital of the Mosel too. The river Mosel runs from France to the river Rhine, and Trier is a very interesting stop also for river cruises. From Trier you can go to Amsterdam, you can go to Basel, or you can go to Frankfurt. So Trier has lots of interesting places for festivals or to drink a glass of wine. And there's one place which is very special, because it was one of the first places in Germany where a market took place. You can see buildings from 2,000 years of history. Well, you can see buildings from the Roman times, Gothic buildings, Romantic buildings, buildings of Baroque, Art Deco. Trier is also the birthplace of Karl Marx, and Karl Marx lived for 17 years in the city of Trier in the beginning of the 19th century. And last year it was the 200th anniversary of Karl Marx, and we edited a €0 bill. I could show you. This is Karl Marx, and this is a bill, and you can buy it in the tourist information, for example. And this is quite a very, very interesting symbol, because when Karl Marx lived in Trier and in other European cities, he developed a money theory, and he's quite famous for the fact that he couldn't deal with money very good, so he was always a very poor man during his life. We have lots of festivals in Trier. Well, we have summer festivals, we have light festival, and during December we have the Christmas market in Trier.
Chasing Wild Ass, oh, it's not what you're thinking. It's a narrative of my travel around the world. I have interspersed photos and aromatic recipes, which allows you to dream, discover, and rediscover these great destinations around the world. The title of the book came about while we were chasing jackasses in Kutch Wild Ass Sanctuary in Gujarat, India. And I thought that was a great title for the book. This is food for the soul. Not only does it allow you to dream, it's adventure, it's history, it's culinary, it's culture, with a sense of humor to spice it up. Chasing Wild Ass is a celebration of life. You have to live each day as if it's your last. Remember, my world is your world, so get up, get out, and travel.
This lovely red house behind me is appropriately called the Red House, and was built in 1664, and you can see there's a Latin inscription above the door on the building, and it says that 1,300 years before Rome, that is before Rome was founded, Trier was already in existence. Now, that of course is not true, but it's a nice story that the city fathers invented in the Middle Ages to make everything a little more important here. It had something to do with who gets to crown the Roman emperor, as he was called, the German emperor. We're now at the Christmas market on our main market here in town, and behind me are the historical facades. Very important buildings that were here on the market earlier, going back into the Middle Ages and shortly thereafter. The buildings were destroyed initially in the so-called Battle of the Bulge in the Second World War and were not replaced until the end of the 1960s. The facades were not replaced by the city, but by a private company. Inside, of course, the buildings are completely different today. The building on behind my shoulder here, the white building, was what was once upon a time called the Ratskeller. That is a sort of a banqueting house, a festival house for the city fathers here. Shall we say they threw big parties here, and it was built in the 15th century. And for example, on market day, going back into the Middle Ages, the public scale was hung out here, and if it was determined that the bakers had sold his bread underweight, then of course he was put into the pillory and people would throw rotten vegetables at him and so on. And then behind me on the corner of the building you can see a bronze rod that's got a scale on it. That is, when you came here to sell cloth, let's say you came from Cologne. You had a different weights and measuring system in Cologne, but if you came here to sell cloth or buy cloth, then of course you had to go by the Trier L, that is the measuring from your hand to your elbow.
The Gothic Church sits next to the Trier Church, and it consists of 3 large naves.
The church behind me is the Church of Our Lady. It's a parish church. It is connected to the cathedral. As I said, this was a cathedral complex. There were 2 buildings side by side. Now, whereas the core of the cathedral, which you have just seen, is still Roman, there is nothing Roman left here above the ground. That is, the Church of Our Lady sits on Roman foundations. So the lovely Gothic church that you're seeing here is the first one in Germany from the new style that the French invented. So what you're looking at here with this lovely Gothic church is 1230 to 1260. We're now standing next to a copy of a left foot, that's left over from a huge colossus that is a gigantic statue of the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great. The ruins of this colossus, which once upon a time stood 40 feet high, are in Rome. A head is there, a right arm with a hand, and then this left foot. The statue shows Constantine seated on a throne, portrayed as Jupiter, and as I said, it was 40 feet high. Another clue as to what Roman emperors thought of themselves.
The Roman bath is in ruins, but it's being restored. You know, Roman baths were very popular throughout the region. I'm sitting here with Miles Spoor, and he's from the Trier Tourist Office, and I have had the most wonderful time here. It's a great destination. I've never been to a place like this that has so much history and so much color, great food, so much to discover. Talk about some of the things we discovered.
Well, first I would talk about the great Roman remains you encountered during your trip, which actually are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Association, and that's just one part of our beautiful city, because you also visited the very charming Christmas market.
Oh,
and,
my God. And the Glühwein.
Yeah, you smelled the Glühwein. It's,
what do you mean smell? I drank it.
Yeah, I would advise that, especially during Christmas season, to visit the Christmas market and taste the wonderful
bratwurst, for instance.
Like bratwurst, or
yeah. And also trinkets that they sell, all kinds of things you can decorate your tree with.
Actually, many handcrafted things that the people around Trier produce during the year, and yeah, they finally can present it to the public.
Yeah, and the great thing is you guys won for the best prize for the Christmas market, which I think is fantastic too. And talk about some of the other things that I think that are so exciting here.
The other things so exciting, talking from my perspective as a younger person, I would say that because of the university we also have in our town, we do have a lot of culture, like as I said, the Roman history and actually many art events in our city. And because of the close vicinity to the Benelux region with Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg, we are
also close.
Yeah, very, very close indeed. And that is really a point for our cultural diversity, which you can experience like at every corner in Trier and the whole region.
And what's so amazing is Paris is so close. So
It is,
if you're
actually.
here, you can go to Paris, or if you're in Paris, you can come here. You know, and also what's great is because of the university, you have so many young students here. There's so many young people walking around.
We also do have some very interesting nightlife here with many different bars and clubs which are mostly family-owned businesses which exist like hundreds of years actually.
But I think also it's a colorful town, which I think is fantastic. I mean, these wonderful buildings that have been restored and they just look so refreshing, you know, when you walk through the center of town, which is where it leads you right into the market, and you see all of these beautiful historical things that are fresh, like they just painted them up. It's just absolutely fabulous. Miles, what do you do socially in this town?
A very rich social life here in Trier because of many local events which grew over the centuries, like you may have noticed the vineyards around town, and when there is the harvesting season, we celebrate many local wine festivals.
And in the summertime, do you have kayaking on the river? Because I think that would be a natural thing to do.
We do, actually.
And you have races, regattas?
Yeah, we do. A little bit down the river, actually.
Because that's
Those
exciting,
regattas
especially
stuff.
for young people. I mean, it's such a great challenge, you know. You know, I didn't know about this city before, but just coming here and exploring it, it's like, it's an adventure. It's really walking out of the hotel, it's an adventure every step, and it's wonderful. And then you've got that wonderful gate, which is Roman. There's a lot of Roman history here, but that gate, when I first came in, I thought, my God, is that someone's old palace? I had no idea what it was, and discovered it was a part of the original gate that surrounded the old town. I found that everybody was very friendly, number one, and secondly, it's safe. When you're traveling here, it's safe, and that's very important for people to know. What is more celebrated than the Christmas market in Trier? The town received a prize for the best Christmas market this year. The Christmas market offers lots of bratwurst, glühwein, and many crafts that were produced by locals. The Christmas market is lots of fun, and it's a great place to socialize.
You know, when I think of Christmas, I think of the Christmas market in Germany. It's so exciting. People come from everywhere. It's really a celebration of life. The Glühwein, the bratwurst. Oh, mwah, love it. Until next week, I'm Jon Haggins, the GlobeTrotter. Remember, get up, get out, and travel.
Look forward to seeing you next week for another colorful experience. So long for now.